And
hello and welcome to World Sand Project. I'm the magical sand genie and life coach to the rich and famous, Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Younis, Administrative Assistant to the Magical Sand Prince Genie, and your host for today. We have I'm not going to call this beautiful, I'm going to call it unique. Not only from a standpoint of where I collected it, because I did collect this sample myself, but what it produced in results in terms of looking at it under the microscope. And this is one that is accessible to a lot of people. So I'm going to strongly recommend that you get there one day, if you haven't already. All right? Let's take a look at it in just a couple of seconds. You're trying to keep up with it. Here we go. So I want to do a little bit of
housekeeping. You want towel?
You want towel, especially if you're going up to this area, because this summer it's going to be hotter than a $3 bill. Please make sure before you leave today you like our video. YouTube likes it when you like our video. The folks at the Bureau of Land Management, I hear, like it when you like our video. Share it with your family, your friends, your neighbors, your business associates.
People at the Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area would appreciate you liking the video.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Share it with your family, your friends, your neighbors, your business associates, the entirety of your social network so that we can
grow the channel.
And finally, if you're not already a subscriber, this would be the ideal time to press down on that subscribe button.
Ooga.
And then when you see the notifications bell, ring the notifications bell, and that way every time we start a live stream, you'll be immediately informed and in the know. I'm sorry. I took away your line. You don't want... I did that on Saturday night. It was no fun. I like it better when you do it. I do want to remind everybody that our mission is to make you all aware that sand is a precious commodity, and it is a resource that we're using faster than the planet has the ability to replenish it. And there's lots of material out there on the topic. But if you're interested, we have a playlist on the subject on our YouTube channel. Go to playlists and you'll see the world's shortage of sand, because it is experiencing a shortage. But I think if we can continue to show you how beautiful these various samples of sands are, you might start feeling the same way that we do about it. And I'm not going to proselytize here. I'm just going to suggest to you that sand one day will be in short supply in the same way that air and water are going to be in short supply. And we use it for a lot of different things, from construction to the glass you may be drinking from right now. It's all going to go
together.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as they kill the plant life living in the oceans and rivers because they're after the sand, then we lose our blue-green algae, which gives us air, and
downhill from there, Betty.
We ain't got nothing.
So I'm going to switch over to the window shot, and I'm going to do these a little bit slower today because I'm going to try and avoid YouTube or Chrome knocking us off of YouTube, so we don't have to double up on the show. So first, I'm going to go to the World Sand Project sample number 0029. You'll find this link in the description box below in the form of bit.ly/WSP0029 photos. You'll also find a link to maps in the same way if you ever want to come back here. Now, I do copy, screen print some of the maps and put them in here, but if you want to get the maps that we're going to be showing in just a little while, you can get a better look at them. So the area that we're looking at, I'm going to go back because whenever Google does that, it always doesn't put up the best quality image.
Mark Connor says, revised my sand bottle yesterday. Absolutely love it. Thank you, Toby, for the chance for me to win it.
Oh, great. Wow. Congratulations. This is near Las Vegas, Nevada. I was there last weekend before last. Has it been 2 weeks or 1 week?
President's Day weekend. So the 15th and 16th.
So 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 2 weeks ago, I was there for a poker tournament, and I took the opportunity to go out to the Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area. It's about an 800-mile drive from my home in Bernalillo. But across, whenever you make that drive, you just cross a lot of beautiful Western territory. So there's an interesting story behind this. This is Las Vegas. It's actually not in Las Vegas. It's outside of Las Vegas. There is a very nice visitor center. This is a property administered by the Bureau of Land Management rather than the National Park Service. So you have a little bit more freedom. There's rock climbing walls. There's hiking trails. There are a couple of arroyos. Actually, there are more than a couple. I didn't see any flowing water, but they say during the spring, during the spring they experience some rain wash through the arroyos. But this area has a really interesting history. As you can see, it looks like it's in a caldera. It's not like Santa Fe, which sits in a caldera. This area was about 800 million years ago a seabed. It was covered by an ocean that we call the Western Interior Seaway that stretched all the way from Alaska down to the Gulf of Mexico. Then between 800 million years ago and 600 million years ago, it started drying out and it formed a desert. The desert formed sand dunes, and that became the easternmost extension of the Mojave Desert, of which it sits. It's probably the farmost extension of the Mojave. Then around 66 million years ago, they experienced this right here, and it's called the Keystone Thrust. And it was a result of tectonic action that the continent was experiencing, and these mountains pushed up right there, and that's what these mountains are. And the gray area that was on top of the ground kind of landed on top of the red sedimentary sandstone that had come from first the ocean, then the sand dunes, and then the ferric oxide, that the iron that effectively rusted into that, and that's where the red color comes from. Although you can see the mountains right along here as you go to this area, and we go to the maps in just a second, you can see it's got that reddish tint. Calico Basin has a lot more of it, and the sample that I collected didn't have the reddish tint that the sample that I collected from Calico Basin did. And we'll be reviewing that in a couple of weeks. But it has a really intriguing geologic history, and if you look at it from that perspective, it has a great visitor center, very open, very informative. So make sure that if you go to visit the area, go to the visitor center and take a look at what they have to offer, because they provide all this information. So this is a road that's a one-way loop throughout the conservation area. It's a 13-mile long loop, and you drive one way. It has most of the speeds are around 20 miles an hour. When I heard the description, it said it was flat with rolling. It's not flat. It's got some ups and downs, and it's very curvy. But what I did when I went out there is I took my new electric XP bike, and I rode the 13-mile loop. I never do this on batteries. I use what's referred to as pedal assist, and I honestly didn't have any problems doing the 13-mile loop using pedal assist, and I had about half my battery remaining after I'd completed the 13-mile loop, even though there were lots of uphills. I think they were compensated for by the downhills. The location that I decided to select my sample from is, in this case, it's actually west of where the rock formations are, the red rock formations, and it was in an arroyo. And I had the opportunity to use, and all I had to do was pull off to the side here with the bike. And then there was, I wouldn't call it a pathway down into the arroyo and under the bridge, but it was obvious that other people had gone down the same pathway. And it turns out that some people use this, actually, the arroyo, as a hiking trail. If you're a desert hiker, this would be the ideal hiking trail. But as you can see, there's lots of other hiking trails along the area. The 13-mile loop has all these turnoffs, parking areas that you can get off and go up and hike in the canyon or down on the canyon floor. So if you like that desert feel when you're hiking. Some people don't like it. Some people like the deciduous trees of the Appalachian Trail, etc., or the coniferous trees of the Rocky Mountains. This is truly desert landscape. It's beautiful, but you have to really like it to enjoy hiking there. And I don't know I'm sure during the summer it gets up in temperatures. It was around 65, 70 degrees the day that I rode there. And I waited till the left afternoon. So this is from the first parking area that it came to, and as you can see, the rocks actually are red, and those are sedimentary rocks that were left behind after the ocean floors after the ocean dissipated and became effectively a very high desert. The altitude here was around 5,000 feet, which is about the same as where we are here in Albuquerque. But that sediment also had incorporated some ferric oxide, iron, effectively, and it oxidized, and that's what creates the red color. This is from an area called Calico Canyon, which to me was a lot more interesting because it indicated not only the red sedimentary rock, but the rock that preceded that, the yellow sedimentary, both of which were at some time or the other the bottom of an ocean. And the difference here is this was the natural ocean. This is during the time that the ocean was dissipating, was evaporating. So it started collecting some of that iron. That's what made it red. And then this area right here is from the Keystone Thrust that pushed these mountains up from below and overtook that. Calico Basin was an area where I collected a more reddish sand sample than the one, and like I said, I'll show that to you in a couple of weeks. So I did get the opportunity to use my pocket field notes application. And what's nice about it, of course, is the minute you make your first note, it collects the, I'm sorry this isn't a better picture, and I'll explain why. Actually, I'll explain why right now. So Mike Hempfling sent me an email, and he said he had made a couple of improvements to it. And I went to download it, and it wouldn't allow me to download the new version. So stupidly, I deleted the old version, and in the process, deleted all the notes that I had made with it. And then when downloaded the new version, and of course, when I opened the new version, it had all the features, but I had none of my notes. This is from this particular note is something that I was testing out the email part of the app. And I wanted to send this to Mike, so I sent it to him. He managed to save this, so this is what remains of all the notes that I made in Las Vegas. So I apologize for that, but I promised him that I would make a tutorial for the app this weekend, and so I'm going to head down south because it's sandier down south from where we live this weekend, probably on Sunday, and I'm going to do another sand sample collection and document it with Project Note and make a new recording of new images in my Project Note page, and I'll do it on my iPad, which gives me a little bit bigger, a little bit larger image to work with, so I'll have a better version of it for you next week. These are the photos that I took from the Pocket Field Notes app. It lets you take a picture and it puts it in the same folder. This was the exact location at which I collected the sample. I took pictures in 4 directions, north, east, south, and west. And it puts them in the folder. So that way, when you get time to upload that folder, Mike very conveniently made a World Sand Project folder for me. So if you open up that folder and you create a new project, when you go to mail it, it automatically sends a copy to World Sand Project, which is just cool as the dickens. So you don't have to use that. What I felt like is that I actually sorted the sample into 2 different sizes. One, what I'd call coarse sand, which is between 1/2 and 1 millimeter big. And that was interesting in the sense that it contained most of the granitic particles. The larger of the 2 samples, which is very coarse sand, which was larger than 1 millimeter but smaller than 2, so it still is categorized as that, had some of the more interesting features, and I'm going to share those with you. I'm not going to do a lot of the pictures. I want you to know that if you want to see these, all of the photos, just go to bit.ly/WSP0029 photos. That link is down in the description box below. But here's here's the sample. So here's what I discovered. I thought I had broken my camera. It turns out that there's the app changed on me. So I have 2 microscopes behind me over to my right here. One is a stereo microscope, the other is a polarizing microscope. And what was happening is I used to plug them both in because the cameras connect to the computer via USB cable. So I plugged them both in, and I could easily switch using their application from the camera on the stereo microscope to the camera on the polarizing microscope. Then about a week ago, when I switched over, the polarizing microscope would go dark. And I thought, damn it, I burned my camera. I even went to the extent of contacting the manufacturer. They asked me to send it back to them, and they would send me a new one because it was still under warranty. And then today, In the meantime, I ordered another camera because I'm impatient. So I put the camera on, plugged them both in, and the same thing happened. And what I realized is the application, the microscope application, has somehow gotten picky about having a second camera connected. And that's why it's turning dark. And I don't know how to fix it. I may have to re-upload the app because it wasn't doing that before. But I did prepare a Petri dish sample of the smaller of the two sorts so that I could put it under the polarizing microscope to see if we could see anything, but I can't show it to you because I can't play both cameras at the same time. I would have to do that. Let me move the camera from one microscope to the other. I actually decided, I don't usually do this, but they were so distinct, I decided to keep two sample bottles of the sample, one with the stuff that's 1.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter, and one of the stuff that's 1 millimeter to 2 millimeters, because they both had interesting little elements in them. There was very little magnetism in both of them. I ran the magnet through both samples, got a little bit on the edge here, but nothing really significant, nothing in comparison to some of the other samples we'd have. This is the smaller of the two samples at wide angle, and you see far more quartz in this sample than you do in the other. But what's important about this is not only do you see rocks, right? No biogenics, lots of rocks, and they're very angular. And you remember the story that we're always talking about as how sand becomes sand on a beach. It travels using wind and water down these arroyos as they wash down these arroyos, and over literally tens of thousands or even millions of years, they wear down, they start rounding off, and they become what is referred to first as sub-rounded and then rounded. These are not there. These are straight off the mountain and could be as young as 10,000 years. But the combination of weathering and mass wasting has put them into this arroyo right down the bottom, and they're still very angular. They haven't had the opportunity to wear down all those edges before they got to the beaches and did even more rounding. So that's why I thought they were interesting. Now, one of the things that caught my eye was this part of a sample. And I don't know if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, we did a sample that our friend Carter Sitterson sent us. And in that, he included a stone that had come from the coral along the beach. Well, if you look at this sample right here, right in this area here, these areas right here, and this area right here, it looks exactly like that stone that had come off coral, on the beach at Santa Teresa. What that means is this is from that ancient ocean. There's a very good possibility that this little grain of sand is up to 800 million years old, because that's the only way it could have gotten there. It sat on the bottom of an ocean, and I'm not saying that it goes all the way back, because that ocean existed between 800 million years ago and 160 million years ago, which was just the beginning of the dinosaurs. And then at about 66 million years ago, by that time it was all desert. The dinosaurs were gone. The dinosaurs were, oh, that's interesting. So I wonder if the Keystone thrust that occurred was part of the whole massive meteorite that hit the Yucatan Peninsula, forcing the land, because a lot of other things happened as well. So anyway, so what we're looking at is a fossil that could be as old as 160 million years up to 800 million years. And then as I was going through the sample, I started seeing more and more of these that had looked nothing like rocks, that they looked more like some of the foraminifera that we've seen in other of our samples. Now, obviously, we've got the rocks. They are what I'd call sub-rounded. They're still very angular. We do have some quartzite. And in the smaller of the two samples, we have some quartz as well. But then I saw this. Now remember, this is in a grain of sand. But you can see this shape right here that goes down to the point of a tail, back up again, and then there's three bony objects right there. Now, you can't see them as well in this picture. I used a high contrast picture. That's a trilobite. That is a sand grain-sized trilobite, which goes back from 65 million years ago to about 300 million years ago. So we've got a fossilized trilobite in a grain of sand. That's what makes this sample so danged interesting to me. Here's some more of those things that to me look like foraminifera. And I just kept going. I ended up taking a dozen shots in the process. Then I saw this, and that's definitely not a rock and not easily formed by a rock. It is surrounded, as you can see, by lots of rocks. And then I got this. And I'm going to go for, I think I got another shot of it. Maybe I didn't. But I don't know about you guys, but to me, the more time I spend, that's a hole. To me, it looked like part of a bone. And that part of the bone would have to be, ancient in order to have fossilized in that way. So there's a lot of material up here that isn't what you expected. I expected rocks, and I got a lot of other things that had nothing to do with rocks. They had more to do with fossils. This right here, fossilized seashell. So these are all calcium carbonates. Now, none of these, because they're calcium, are never going to make it down. They're soft for all intents and purposes. So they're never going to make it down to the ocean over this as this arroyo washes out through flooding, etc. These rocks right here, which are basically conglomerates, they'll break up. The quartz, because the quartzite, because there's 7 on the Mohs scale, will last the longest and handle the transition down to the ocean the best. So eventually we'll see those quartz hundreds of millions of years from now down on a beach, probably in the Gulf of Mexico, because that's where most of the water from this area leads down to. So it's an amazing sample for being as not a beach, not anything like that. It just has this variety of stuff, and I made myself a promise, I always do this, that I'm going to go back up there and collect more of these samples and do more research on them, because it was very exciting for me. So let's open up, and like I said, what I'm trying to do here is do this a little bit at a time. So Oracle, our Oracle, my friends at Oracle, so that Chrome doesn't mess up OBS. So we're going to go to bit.ly/WSP0029/maps, and that link.
There's no slash.
Oops, I'm sorry. There is no slash. There's none. So this is the location where I took the sample. And again, this link is down in the description box below, as well as the geographic coordinates. But you'll see a little bit more of what I was talking about, the parkway, the office, the keystone thrust that comes as a result of tectonic action, and then the sedimentary sands, the red sedimentary sands and the white sedimentary sands that came from that ocean that started forming 800 million years ago, and was gone within by 180 million years ago. Now, I know that sounds like in geologic times that's not a blink of an eye, but it's 620 million years. That ocean was there 620 million years, so it's pretty impressive. I was impressed. So let's go down now. I do have this in 3D right now. And as I said, I parked my electric bike right there, right on the other side. And you can kind of see the path that leads down into the arroyo, but you can also see tracks in the arroyo, both footprints and wheel tracks. So I was not the first one there by any stretch of the imagination. And as I said, those pictures that you saw came from here. But what's really cool about this is Google's car has been by here. So we can actually stand on top of the bridge without getting run over. And you can see the arroyo as I saw it when I was passing over the bridge. So that would be looking, let me see, that would be looking to the west. And this one to the, do I have it right? Let me see, west. No, that would be to the east, west. The other one to the east. And there's a little Google vehicle with its camera, with its 360 camera going by. So a beautiful area, but absolutely desert rather than anything else. I'm sure that you can find all the desert creatures. I looked at the biology and in Wikipedia, and it's your traditional desert, starting with tortoises and snakes and jackrabbits and things like that. But I'm a big fan of that kind of hike. When I first when I was very young, and I used to go hiking by myself, it was in the area above Santa Fe, in the hills above Santa Fe, not the mountains, and it's that high desert. And so I got accustomed to it, and I kind of had it all figured out, and really enjoyed it. And still go back there. So I'm a big fan of these desert areas. So let's take a look at the app. I'm sorry, the microscope. Well, I've only got one microscope open. I'll decide whether we want to go to the other. And here's the difference. I've got the two quartz crucibles sitting next to each other, so you can see the difference in size. This is the one between 1/2 and 1 millimeter. This is the one that's between 1 and 2 millimeters in size. As I said, I sorted it. This tends to be a little bit more rounded, but you see mostly angular stuff. It just hasn't been around long enough to be worn down in the way that you'd see as you'd find on some of our beaches. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide over, turn around right now, and I'm going to go over to the smaller zoo samples. We'll take a closer look at that. Okay? So let's slide that over, and that's a what I'd call the wide angle shot. I did notice that right here, I'm starting to see those rounded objects that would probably mean they're sapphires or garnets in that color, and they're perfectly round. But this is where I started to see the quartz. But again, the quartz is nothing like we've seen before, in that by the time we see it in some of our other samples, it's pretty well worn down the edges. This material from this sample is very angular. That red piece that you see down there is probably from jasper. It's not part of the sedimentary structure. The sedimentary structure by this time has turned into silt, the sandstone that you see, whether it's red or white, generally speaking, has not made its way this far unless they're big pieces like this that have crunched down. And I say big piece because we're looking at the sample that's between 1/2 millimeter and 1 millimeter across. So let's zoom in, take a quick, better look at it, and I'll move it around so we can see what we can see. So there's the quartzite right there. The white, there's the conglomerates right next to it, that blue rock right there. You can see as you take a closer look at it, it's got different minerals in it. And then they're cemented together with some of that sand so that it turns into a conglomerate. These are the ones right here that I find the most interesting, because my first reaction is all those little holes to me look like they were created by an ancient foraminifera. And then right next to it is the quartzite. So I would say that you could probably generalize and say that the material that's coming off this is, for the most part, rock. The occasional mineral, that green one right there, because it's got a translucent look to it, is probably olivine, as I was corrected. And then quartz, and then some of these right there. And that looks like some of the sapphires that, who sent us this first set of sapphires? Do you remember?
Mike Healy?
Mike Healy sent us. So it's got some of that mineral material in there. And don't get me wrong, it's always going to be, it's always going to be some combination of silicon and oxygen and some other materials to give it the color. So, and when it's red, generally speaking, it's iron. So more conglomerates, mixtures, and as you can see, that in this case, it's the yellowish sedimentary sand that's being used to hold all those other pieces together. So the darker rocks are coming from the mountains that were created. The darker conglomerates are created from the mountains that were part of the keystone thrust, like these. And then the lighter ones, the lighter conglomerates, are coming from the sedimentary rocks or sedimentary sands that are below that. So it's got a lot of variety. This is not unusual to see the sedimentary sand cementing the smaller materials and then getting cemented to an even larger rock. So, and I say this continuing to remind you that we're looking at things that are smaller than 1 millimeter here. But it has a lot of character. I think of all the samples that we've looked at from the continent rather than the beaches, this sample has a lot of character to it, and I was really impressed and excited about it. So if you ever get a chance, again, I'll recommend if you ever get a chance to go to Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area. Take a look at collecting a small sample of sand. Do not fill a 5-gallon bucket with it. There's something that to me has got that pinkish color that the sapphires get, and it's got the translucent. But I did see it was hard to find like a translucent piece of quartz in the sample. It just didn't seem to pop out the way that quartz has in the past. Let me move over to the bigger. This is between 1 millimeter and, oops, what's that? Oh no, we took a look at that. There's the, right there was the one that I referred to earlier. So this looks, that rounded shape looks to me a lot like the sapphires that Mike Healy sent us, that he had collected somewhere outside of not Pittsburgh, was it? Pittsburgh mine?
Montana.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, Pittsburgh. It was Pittsburgh, Montana. It wasn't Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I'm going to have to zoom out just a little bit because these 2 millimeter, the 2 millimeter sort is really big. So we're going to zoom out just a tad so we can take a closer look and see what we can see. But right away you start seeing the fossils. Now the images that I got were from what I call my process sample. It's a much bigger sample. It's got a larger surface area than the crucible that I'm using right now. But I think this gives you another good look at the combination and variety of both rocks and fossils that are in this sample. Now, I'm sure that an experienced geologist could make an argument that they're not fossils, that they're some sort of more, sedimentary rock that's more, less likely or more likely to weather in that way. But there are some natural lines. There's some lines that would more come from something organic than environmental. But all of these, to me, look like miniature rocks. They just haven't been broken down enough to support them being on a beach someplace. It would be a funky beach to walk on because these are still angular to subangular in terms of their formation. They just haven't worn down enough, and that's because we're collecting them right below where they were weathered. The mountains from which they were weathered. So, danged interesting sample. We got that. Is that another one of our little trilobites right there?
Could be.
It's got that little bump on the back of the rock. So, let's see if we can get anything closer to see. Yeah, it's definitely got some shape on it. Right? The little lines right here. See those little lines right there? So, a unique and interesting sample to have collected. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to make the trip up there. Very glad when I took the opportunity to make that trip. And very glad that I took the time to go out and collect these samples. And not only that, I had a really enjoyable ride. I don't know how many of you know, I recently purchased this electric XP bicycle. And what I was worried about is that if it was electric, that A, I wouldn't get any exercise out of it, and B, I wouldn't get any battery life out of it. What I discovered, of course, is that the technology has come a long way. So part of the technology is a computer inside that combines your pedaling action with the electric motor, and it enables you to support the electric motor by pedaling. So you get the benefit of the exercise, plus you get distances. The longest I've ridden thus far is 24 miles on the Bosca Trail, but that's relatively flat. This was more interesting because the road that I was on, although very, very safe, the speed limit is limited. People give you a lot of room. It's wide enough for two vehicles, but it's one way. And so people give you a lot of room to ride. And I noticed there were a lot of athletes using it both as a runner's track and a cyclist's track. And it's got to be a great workout because of the hills. both up and down. But it struck me that the 13 miles is basically a half marathon. So if you could finish it, do that in a day, you're off to your first marathon. But I had a great time on the bike because I got a snake's eye view of the whole thing. It's a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it.
Sassy wants to know what is the black kind of obsidian-looking stuff?
It's not obsidian, and the reason is obsidian is actually the byproduct of slate. So it's a sedimentary rock, and it has to be compressed and put under heat. Pressure and heat is what creates obsidian. These rocks are all from what is referred to as mass wasting and weathering from the mountains above, and those mountains were created via tectonic action where they were pushed up. And so they're basically what are referred to as igneous rocks. They were created below the crust and then pushed up. And so they're mostly minerals that are cemented together in a very hard way. But the black comes from the fact that they were basically at one time inside lava that cooled. The faster it cooled, the better the smaller the minerals, the slower it cooled, the bigger the minerals, because that's how minerals grow. And crystals, especially. I didn't see anything that looked like obsidian in this sample, but that would not be unusual for this area because of the combination of the ocean sedimentary rocks, and the sedimentary rocks were not there long enough. You find obsidian in places where there is petroleum nearby because it's the combination of that dark material along with the pressure and the heat turning into slate, and then, I'm sorry, not slate, shale, and then the shale pressed even further. As a matter of fact, I have a beautiful sample of obsidian it's been sandwiched in the shale. I have a picture of it the next time we're here, and it comes up. I'll show you a picture of that obsidian that's been sandwiched between two layers of shale. It's very dynamic. So, is that it for questions? Mm-hmm. All right, guys. And keep in mind, of course, you're looking at a sample of sand here. These aren't rocks. These are small grains of sand. And sand basically is just a smaller version of a rock. They turn into pebbles, and pebbles turn into boulders, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what sand is. It's just small pieces of rock, depending on where you are. All right? So remember to keep in mind, sand is a precious resource, and that we as a species are using it faster than the planet has the ability to replenish it, and one day we'll run out of sand, and if we run out of sand, we can't build anything. We can't make computers, we can't make houses, we can't make the glasses that you're drinking from, or in my case, looking through. So thanks for joining us today. We hope you found this sample interesting. All the links you need are down below, including links to the photos, links to the maps, and links to the Pocket Field Notes app that I talked about. And I will be going out this weekend on Saturday because I will be riding along the Bosque. I'm sorry, Sunday, because I will be riding along the Bosque, and I'll get you. I'll make a tutorial for Pocket Field Notes for you guys. Okay. And
well, thanks everybody for joining us today for World Sand Project. And if you are interested, 4 o'clock today we'll be on the softer side interviewing Dr. Michelle Deering, and she's a specialist in mother-daughter relationships. So look forward to that. 4 o'clock on the softer side. And of course, we'll be back tonight for a Gypsy's Kiss.
At 7 o'clock, yeah. Mm-hmm. So thanks for joining us today. Join us next Wednesday. I will have a sample of sand from Iceland, which was given to me by one of our viewers and friends. So join us then.